You guys know about Ozempic, right? You guys have heard about this new thing? Have you seen it? Have you heard about this? Ozempic, for the fatty bone baddies out there, being bought up by celebrities like Kim Kardashian. CNN says, WHO advisors consider whether obesity medication should be added to the essential medicines list. The WHO, the World Health Organization, which has overseen the largest degrading of health in human history, is considering adding Ozempic, the obesity medication, to the essential medicines list. Now we're going to play with this a little bit. Let's hear what they say. Advisors at the World Health Organization will consider next month whether to add liraglutide to the active ingredient in diabetes and obesity medications to the list of essential medicines. The list, which is updated every 2 years, includes medicines that, quote, medicines, quote, that satisfy the priority health needs of the population, end quote, the WHO says. They are intended to be available within the context of function health systems at all times in adequate amounts and in appropriate dosages and forms of assured quality and at prices that individuals in the community can afford. So they want to make Ozempic an essential medicine, which means it will be available in large quantities, right? It's always readily available, and it'll be at a price that most people can afford. So what is Ozempic, and what does Ozempic do? Let's check this out. This is from 60 Minutes Overtime, just kind of a brief breakdown from somebody who I'm sure is completely unbiased and rational in their approach. Let's check this out.
Biggest misconception about obesity.
The biggest misconception about weight and obesity is that somehow your weight is under your control. Obesity is...
The biggest misconception about weight and obesity is that somehow it's under your control. Now, while I'll admit, and I have said this, a lot of times obesity is not a person's fault, right? It is an addiction and sort of a disease, but it depends, right? It's very nuanced. If you get your brain and your neurology coded to sweets, low quality food, overeating, sugar addiction at a young age based on parents that are morons and a system that profits from your fatness, right? It makes it really hard to say that's 100% your fault. It is your responsibility to do something about it. But even obtaining quality information is incredibly burdensome because these companies, the sugar lobby, has flooded the zone with so much bad science, right? And the same companies who sell all the sugary sweets also own these like fad diet companies like South Beach and Jenny Craig and all this other bullshit. Those are still owned by these mega corporations. So they're profiting from your fatness and your attempts at sorting yourself out. So we have large interests at stake that manipulate human nature for their own profit. Yes, but to say that it's purely genetic is a flat out lie. Go look at photos from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, right? Go check that out. Just photos of the beach versus photos of the beach from now. Were all the obese people, the 40% of people that just happen to be obese, did they just stay inside on those days? Like, what was going on? Clearly something has changed, and it's not genetic. Let's continue.
It's a disease of the pathways that regulate your energy balance.
And those pathways has been hijacked by corporations and special interests that profit from those pathways being manipulated.
Dr. Caroline Apovian, who specializes in weight management at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, explained how the anti-obesity medication Wegovy and the diabetes drug Ozempic work. These new medications that have come out, what do they actually do in the body?
These new medications are analogs of naturally occurring hormones that your body makes. When the food goes through your intestines, those cells in the intestine makes these hormones, and the hormones go to the brain and say you're full. That's what we're putting in a pen, and we're just giving patients a little more of that fullness hormone.
So the new medication is saying, all right, you've eaten enough.
You've eaten enough, and it does so when you've eaten less food. That's what it's supposed to do.
Are those the medications?
It's just like
So you're hijacking your neurology, right? To say, hey, I'm full. Well, let's ask ourselves a question that probably doesn't get asked very often. Why are we in a situation where your gut and the connection between your gut and your brain is lying to you about how much food you need, right? Is that genetic? Really? Because maybe we're not eating nutrient dense food. And while we're overeating calories, right? Overeating quantities of food, we're actually starving as a culture, as a people, as a country, right? We are starving for nutrients because our food has been so manipulated and bastardized that it takes us overeating to the point of becoming obese to even flirt with appropriate levels of certain micro and macronutrients. Now, what can you say about palatability and reward? Like, well, sweet things that are salty and full of fat, right? So there's all those things combined, which of course, I'm not villainizing fat here, but these things combined, salty, sweet, and fat, hijack your neurology. Now, if you add those things all together in something that has very little micronutrient density, you're going to be able to eat that forever because your body's not getting what it needs from food. Now, what you could say is, hey, only eat food that looks like food. Chips don't look like food. Twinkies don't look like food, right? Cereal does not look like food. That's not food. That's food-like products. It can keep you alive, kind of. But do that. Eat a steak and sweet potato with butter on it, right? And some salt, of course. You need that. Shout out to Element. And see how much you can overeat that. See how much you can overeat that. It's not the same. It's not the same as a pizza. Not the same as French fries. French fries are a good example, right? You got the starches in there, which is fine. Potatoes are fine. But then you add the salt. Then you add the grease, right? Do all these things. You're hijacking your neurology. And even French fries, as far as like list of things that you can eat that are pretty low on the list. But just as an example of how many more French fries you can eat than plain potatoes, right? There's a big discrepancy there, and that's the product of that palatability and reward system, which this woman does not want to bring up. She wants to put you on an injection that's lifetime, right? And what she's talking about that they're about being a hormone precursors that will essentially hijack your neurology and tell your brain that you're full. That is exactly the same thing as human growth hormone, testosterone, HCG, these different anabolics, right? That's what they do. Would they have the same opinion of anabolics in doing that with your endocrine system? Probably not, right? Probably not. That also changes your behavior in a certain way. But then what happens when you come off? Do they talk about that? What are the side effects? Do they talk about that? No. It's a profit-driven cure for a fake problem. Whenever I used to take Adderall, I took Adderall in college, or Vyvanse was my thing. Took it in college, and then I took it a little bit after. And I remember I went to a kind of a holistic doctor, Wiseman Family Practice in Austin, Texas. Can't speak highly enough about their practice. Fantastic. But doctors, he was very honest. I loved Dr. Wiseman because he was so honest. And I remember I was like, hey, I used to take Adderall for ADHD, yada, yada, yada. I had been diagnosed with ADHD. I think I do have some kind of ADD something. I have the symptoms of it, but that means I have to structure my life in a different way. That's what I do now and have for a decade. But at this time, I was like working a lot, really hustling, really grinding, doing the thing. And it really helped because I was, being on speed helps you get shit done. And it was funny. We were having this conversation and he goes, you understand that this is a make-believe solution to a make-believe problem, right? And I was like, that's the best way I've ever heard this drug described. Adderall and Vyvanse, for the most part, and some people do need these drugs, right? I don't call them medicines because they're not, they're drugs. Some people do need these drugs. And I'd say it's probably about 2% of the people who take these drugs, right? Adderall is a make-believe solution to a make-believe problem. Ozempic is a make-believe solution to a make-believe problem. There are 1,000 other things you can do to accomplish the goals that Ozempic has set that have nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. So let's ask ourselves a bigger question here. Let's zoom out a little bit. What really helps when it comes to macronutrient availability, ingestion, right? Well, a diversity of food, different types of foods, right? A variety of foods, seasonal foods, local foods. The big part too, right? You should have different foods in the spring versus the winter versus the summer versus the fall. Different things are in season. And that happens naturally because nature knows what the fuck it's doing to provide you with the macronutrients needed in those times, which we've completely gotten away from after World War II by monocrop agriculture and the bias in quantity instead of quality. So if we look here, farms get bigger even as the number of farms decline. So you've got 2009 to about 2016 here, and it's only gotten much worse since then. But to do this inverse relationship, millions of farms has decreased from about 2.17 million to about 2 million. And the size of farms has increased in almost the exact inverse relationship. So what is that saying? There's less local farms, less small farms, and more big farms, which does what? Decrease variation, decreases small farm and competition within that market, right? Decreases variation, way less seasonal approach, more monocrop approach. It's a toxic way of going about it. We need small local farms. We need a nationwide push for more small local farms providing food for schools, for grocery stores in that area. Maybe you shouldn't be able to get every fruit on the planet at any time. And we should be okay with that. That is good, right? That is appropriate. We want to talk about climate change and the environment. Having avocados flown to wherever the you are, from wherever the they grow, isn't necessarily a good thing, right? So we look at that. We say, wow, that is a dangerous, dangerous trend that we need to do something about. We need to break up these conglomerates and put the focus back on new farms that can try new techniques and have the benefits of capitalism, right? And the variations within the market. And those who do better with regenerative agriculture, variation, crop rotation, raising healthy animals, those people should rise to the top. And we should set the incentive structure in a way that rewards that type of agriculture. It's better for our health. It's better for our environment. It's more moral and ethical. So many boxes are checked by that, but it gets ignored because we're still operating from a poverty mindset and the mindset of people that are starving, because we are as a culture. One last thing I wanted to bring up here as an example of the level of fuckery that we're existing in. Post Consumer Brands has a new product. It's called Sweet Dream Cereal. It says, for 130 million American adults, a good night's sleep is elusive. You deserve a good night's sleep, and we want to help you enjoy it. So we made Sweet Dream Cereal, the first ready-to-eat cereal specially designed to support a good sleep routine and a fresh start to the next day. Sleep cereal. Interesting. Now let's look here at the Blueberry Midnight Cereal. Natural and delicious flavors of blueberry, lavender, and chamomile, plus curated vitamins and minerals to support natural melatonin production. Our dreamy cereal supports a healthy sleep routine. Let's look at the nutrition facts here. All right, so we've got 46 grams of carbohydrates, 16 grams of sugar, 13 grams of added sugar. Ingredients. Let's just read these off real quick. Whole grain wheat, rice, cane sugar. Well, at least it's cane sugar and not high fructose corn syrup. Whole grain rolled oats, almonds, dried blueberries, inert sugar, glycerin, sunflower oil, natural flavors, canola and or soybean oil. Well, that's awful. Flavor clusters. What the is a flavor cluster? Sugar, corn syrup, jitterbird corn, cornstarch, palm oil, natural lavender and chamomile flavors, cacao, blueberry and carrot concentrates for color, salt, barley malt extracts, corn syrup again. How many times is corn syrup going to be in this thing? Molasses, whatever that word is, and natural flavor, which who knows what the hell that means. Is it flavor that is natural, flavor that's supposed to taste natural? Who knows? Let's look at some of the things that are scary here. We got sugar added, of course. No surprise there. Sunflower oil, canola oil, soybean oil, corn syrup, corn syrup, corn syrup. And that is from the innovative brilliance of post-consumer brands. And we wonder why. We wonder why we're starving as a nation. We wonder why we act in a way as if we are dying and desperate and in need at all times. And we wonder why our culture is manifested in such a way that is the reality.